Somewhere in Texas right now, a farmer is waking up to find his cornfield gone. Not damaged, not nibbled at. Gone. Hundreds of acres of crops stripped clean overnight, with the soil churned into something that looks more like a war zone than a farm. And the thing responsible didn't leave a trace. No footprints the size of a bear, no drag marks from some massive predator, just thousands of small hoof prints and the lingering smell of something that definitely wasn't there yesterday. The culprit is an animal you've almost certainly seen before, one that you probably laughed at as a kid, one that gets turned into bacon. And right now, there are somewhere between 6 and 9 million of them spreading across North America, and scientists are genuinely struggling to stop them. This is the feral hog, and it is quietly winning. To understand how a pig becomes a crisis, you first have to understand what a feral hog actually is. These animals aren't native to the Americas. They were brought over in the 1500s by early explorers and settlers as a food source. And free-range livestock practices led to the first feral populations quietly establishing themselves in the wild. For a few centuries, that was basically fine. They stayed mostly in the South, mostly in rural areas, and mostly out of people's way. Then something changed. In 1982, only 18 states reported established feral hog populations. By 2016, that number had jumped to 35, and the number of counties affected has nearly tripled since the early 1980s, from around 550 to over 1,400. That's not slow drift, that's a takeover. And the reason it happened so fast comes down to one thing: what these animals actually are on the inside. Feral hogs aren't just escaped farm pigs that got a little wild. Today's feral pig is a combination of escaped domestic livestock, Eurasian wild boar introduced for sport hunting, and hybrids of the two. That hybrid genetics part is the really alarming bit. You take a domestic pig, which is already built to reproduce explosively, and you cross it with a wild boar, which is built to survive almost anything. What you get is something that is very good at both. They can breed year-round, with average litters of 5 to 8 piglets, and their populations can double in size within just 4 months. Let that sit for a second. 4 months. And females can start reproducing at just 6 months old, meaning a single sow born in spring can be producing her own litter before the year is even out. Experts say wild hog populations would need to be reduced by more than half each year just to keep them at their current level. Most states aren't anywhere close to that, so the numbers just keep climbing. We're safe from them though, right? They're pigs. Surely you can just shoot them. Well, yes and no. Hunters in Texas alone kill an estimated 750,000 hogs per year, and Texas still has around 3 million of them. Because every time you take some out, the surviving sows compensate by having larger litters. It's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. Except the boat is also somehow filling faster the more you bail. And their destruction isn't subtle. These animals will eat and uproot almost any crop. Sugarcane, corn, soybeans, wheat, peanuts, rice. You name it, they've eaten it. The damage they cause costs an estimated $2.1 billion every single year across the United States. That's billion, with a B, every year. One Texas rancher reported finding a 70-acre hayfield pockmarked with holes up to 5 feet deep by morning. The work of a single night's rooting from a large sounder moving through, in a single night. But crops are just the beginning. Studies have found that biodiversity in forests infested with wild hogs is around 26% lower than in areas without them. They eat fawn deer. They dig up sea turtle nests on beaches. They destroy the burrows of ground-nesting birds and then eat the eggs. A 2019 study found wild pigs digging up eggs from endangered loggerhead sea turtles on an island off the coast of South Carolina. They don't just eat the land, They restructure it. Soil that hogs root through becomes compacted and eroded, and native plants give way to invasive ones almost immediately after. One wildlife manager put it simply, "It's easier to list what they don't eat than what they do." Are they dangerous to people? Generally, a hog would rather run than fight. But corner one, or stumble into a sounder with piglets, and the answer changes pretty fast. They have tusks. They can weigh up to 500 pounds. There have been documented human deaths. They've also been known to charge dogs, flip over trash cans in suburban neighborhoods, and show up on golf courses, school grounds, and residential lawns. Which brings us to the part of this story that's honestly more unsettling than any of the above. They're not staying in the countryside anymore. Their range has been pushing steadily westward and northward. States like California, Michigan, and Pennsylvania now have large established feral hog populations. In 2024, residents of an Irving, Texas neighborhood set up cameras after noticing something wrong with their yards every morning. What they caught on footage was roughly 10 feral hogs systematically digging up landscaped lawns night after night, with no interest in leaving. A man in Houston was nearly bitten by a feral hog in his own driveway. These aren't rural problems anymore. They're suburban ones. And this is all before we even get to Canada. In the 1980s, Canadian farmers started importing European wild boar to raise as livestock. A niche idea that made sense on paper. Then the market for wild boar meat collapsed in the early 2000s, and farmers, thinking the animals couldn't possibly survive Canadian winters, simply released them into the wild. That was a mistake. Instead of dying in the cold like everyone assumed, the pigs thrived. But not as regular hogs. The wild pigs in Canada were originally crossbred to be larger and more cold-hardy than their feral cousins to the south. This combination of traits has earned them a new name among researchers: super pigs. The biggest one ever captured weighed 638 pounds. For comparison, a typical feral hog in Texas averages somewhere between 150 and 200 pounds. And they've figured out something their southern relatives haven't: winter survival. These animals have been found building above-ground shelters that researchers have actually nicknamed pigloos. They cut down cattails with their tusks and use them to line insulated nests that hold body heat through brutal prairie winters. An animal that engineers its own insulated shelter to survive a Canadian winter is not an animal you underestimate. And their territory has been expanding by an estimated 34,000 square miles per year. Now they're heading south. Research published in the journal Biological Invasions found there is high potential for Canadian super pigs to cross into South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, and Minnesota, where they could inflict billions of dollars in damage. Researchers have already documented pig activity less than 10 miles from the US border, with some likely already crossing into North Dakota. The northern states that largely thought this was someone else's problem are about to find out it isn't. So what's actually being done? The USDA has a national feral swine damage management program. Some states have aerial gunning operations. Scientists are testing a GPS tracking technique where they collar one hog, release it, and follow it directly to its sounder so the whole group can be trapped at once. There are even experiments with contraceptive-laced bait. All of it helps. None of it is enough. Ryan Brook, a researcher from the University of Saskatchewan who has spent years tracking these animals, put it bluntly, "I think we've been living in a bit of a fool's paradise. This isn't that big of an issue, but it is. It's here, it's widespread, and it is as out of control as any wildfire I've ever seen." That's a wildlife scientist comparing a pig population to a wildfire. And honestly, the math backs him up. Here's the thing nobody really talks about. The feral hog didn't sneak up on anyone. We knew they were spreading. We knew the numbers. We knew the reproduction rates. Scientists have been publishing warnings about this for decades. And the animal just kept going. city by city, state by state, province by province. The scientific consensus is clear. In North America, wild pigs are a growing threat to both ecosystems and the economy, with virtually no evidence they provide any ecological benefit. They don't fill a gap. They don't replace anything. They just take crops, nesting grounds, native plants, turtle eggs, deer fawns, and increasingly, the peace of mind of anyone who farms or lives within their range. The animal quietly taking over North America isn't a wolf or a bear or some newly discovered apex predator. It's a pig. A very large, very smart, very hungry, increasingly cold-resistant pig. And it has a 4-month head start on all of us. Thanks for watching. If you want to see another video on why some predators have stopped fearing humans, check it out here.